It's a Twin Thing, the first year, and It's a Twin Thing picture book, written by Lindsay Armstrong, text copyright 2024 by Lindsay Armstrong, production copyright 2024 by Lindsay Armstrong, narrated by Dana Jones. To my sweet little miracle babies, Jaxson and Hayden, I hope you will always be best friends. I like and love you. Mom. Some little boys have brothers or sisters. Some have best friends. But Jaxson and Hayden were special because they got both. They were best friends and brothers who happened to look just alike. It's a twin thing. When they were still in their mommy's belly, there wasn't much room. Hayden sat on Jackson's head for 8 whole months because there was no other place to go. One time, when Mommy and Daddy went to the doctor for an ultrasound, they even got a picture of Jaxson kicking Hayden in the head. He wasn't being mean, just trying to stretch, and Hayden didn't mind too much. It's a twin thing. They grew bigger and bigger in their mommy's tummy until eventually they grew so big that Hayden popped the bubble of special water called an amniotic sac that was keeping him safe. For an entire week, until the doctors realized what had happened, Jaxson did his best to squish up against Hayden so he could plug the hole and keep the water in. He knew he had to keep Hayden safe. It's a twin thing. Because of the popped bubble, Hayden and Jaxson were born a whole 6 weeks early. They had a hard time breathing, and when he was born, Jackson's face was blue. But the doctors worked quickly and kept saying how amazingly strong Jaxson and Hayden were. They said they weren't surprised, though. It's a twin thing. They had to stay in the hospital for 17 whole days to learn how to do things like eat and control their body temperature. When they were still in the hospital, so tiny they could barely open their eyes, they would scrunch their legs up underneath their chest and wiggle until their heads were touching, just to reassure themselves that their brother was nearby. They weren't supposed to be able to scoot yet, but that's how strong their bond was. It's a twin thing. Eventually, Jaxson and Hayden grew strong enough to drink milk from their mommy instead of from a tube and finally got to go home. It was hard work for Mommy and Daddy. Because they were so little, eating made them sleepy, and Mommy had to keep rubbing their cheeks with a cold washcloth to get them to wake up and finish their food. She also had to make sure they ate every 2.5 hours so they could keep growing. But when they held hands over Mommy's heart as they ate, it was all worth it. Sometimes, when they were really hungry and Mommy wasn't fast enough, they'd suck on each other's heads. It's a twin thing. Jaxson and Hayden loved to do everything together. If Hayden was hungry, so was Jaxson. If Jaxson was sleepy, so was Hayden. And when they were 4.5 months old, they rolled over for the first time within 60 seconds of each other. It's a twin thing. Soon they were scooting all around the house. They would drag themselves around by their forearms like they were soldiers sneaking up on the enemy. They tried to put everything they found in their mouths, and soon Mommy and Daddy had moved anything dangerous up high. Even the garbage can got moved to the top of the kitchen table. When they were 6 months old, Mommy gave them their first food that wasn't milk. Rice cereal. It was thin and goopy, and the first time they ate it, they made faces and spit it out. But soon they were eating everything. Peas, carrots, and squash were their favorites. When Mommy took too long feeding one baby, the other one would flap their arms in frustration while bouncing up and down in their high chair. But Mommy would tell them they'd just have to learn to be patient and wait their turn. It's a twin thing. When they were 9 months old, Jaxson and Hayden learned to crawl. Soon they were zooming around the house and helping each other get into everything. Their favorite activity was playing with the electrical cords for the television. They loved to chew on the rubber encasing the wires. But Mommy always said no and moved them away. Then they'd have to try and crawl across the room again before Mommy caught them. One day, Mommy asked Grandma for help with this problem. Grandma brought a big roll of duct tape, and together she and Mommy taped the cords to the baseboards so Jaxson and Hayden couldn't eat them. Every time they tore off another strip of tape, Jaxson and Hayden would start to cry loudly. Not long after they started to crawl, they began to pull themselves up to the windowsills. That's when they discovered their new favorite toy, the cords on the blinds. Mommy tied those up high out of reach. But Jaxson and Hayden didn't mind that as much as when she took away the electrical cords. At least they could still grab big blocks and stuffed animals from each other. Sometimes they would share, but usually they'd start crying. It's a twin thing. Less than a month before their first birthday, Jaxson took his first steps. Only 2 days later, Hayden took his first steps too. Then, right before their birthday, Mommy took them to get their first haircut. She almost cried when she saw those beautiful locks on the floor. Where had her little babies gone? All too soon the big day arrived. Jaxson and Hayden were officially one. To celebrate, Mommy and Daddy took them to the zoo. It was the middle of August and so very hot, but Jaxson and Hayden loved seeing the elephants, giraffes, and polar bears. Mommy and Daddy would pull them out of their stroller and hold them up high to see the animals, and they would kick their little feet to get down. Mommy and Daddy wouldn't let them, though. There were too many other people around. That night, Mommy and Daddy gently laid a sleepy Jaxson and Hayden in their cribs, turned off the lights, and shut the door. Jaxson and Hayden stared at each other across the room and grinned, because they knew something Mommy and Daddy didn't, that while their first year of life was over, the best was yet to come. The future would be full of many more twin things, and they couldn't wait to experience every single one. Thank you for listening to It's a Twin Thing, the first year, and It's a Twin Thing picture book, written by Lindsee Armstrong. Text copyright 2024 by Lindsee Armstrong. Production copyright 2024 by Lindsee Armstrong.